Welcome everyone to the Sales Intel and Conquer webinar today. Woohoo! We're going to be talking about how to build an effective customer engagement strategy. With us today, you have myself, Ariana Shannon, the Director of Marketing here at Sales Intel, and Tim Harris, one of my good friends from Conquer, the VP of Marketing over at Conquer. And I love the conversation we had earlier. I know you are living this, like you said, day in and day out with what you're trying to build.
Absolutely, from a product side, but also from a strategy side. And today is really fun because it's all about the strategy side and actually putting the pieces on the board. So fun to talk about kind of high level little strategy of where we see some of the challenges. Heck, the challenges that I've been facing as I set this up myself. And so looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go ahead and dive in. Just a quick cover of the agenda. These are the three main areas of identifying the buying. Sorry, my face is in the way on this on my screen. Identifying the buying committee and gaining access to that. Renewing and expanding your accounts, and then of course creating new opportunities when champions transition roles. Those are like the three primary areas, but there's really a lot going into this. And of course, that is always the question of why are we here and why are we talking about this? From a really high level, the customer engagement strategy, some people think of this on the success side of things, once you actually have the customer and you want to make sure that they're engaged in doing things. But it really starts much sooner than that. So Tim, I'll go ahead and flip to the next slide and you can dive into that conversation.
Yeah, well, I think we always are faced with challenges around attention, right? And attention from the economic buyer, or the champion, attention from those that are maybe in the buying group. And then once they're customers, that's always great. The deal's signed, but then we have to get the attention of users. And the communication across those different groups are usually kind of scattered and different, right? We've got buyers and decision makers in that buying group that are self-researching, self-educating, getting things from marketing, maybe talking to a sales team member, but really kind of a challenge between keeping that story cohesive on the front end of the sale, leaving buyers confused or leaving them to go kind of fend for their own or get different messages and saying, well, your feature sheet says this, but your salesperson said this. Confusion. Backside, users, maybe they're only talking to support, so maybe they're not having great experience. So we need to get those NPS scores up, right? We all live off of user reviews and feedback there to then get that renewal and expansion. So it's
Mhm.
one big loop or one continuous flywheel, and it just you see the breakdowns between systems and silos as well as silos and business units. And we say that
Absolutely.
CRM is going to bring all that together as our data source, but we know that what maintaining CRM as a central point of truth,
That's a
keeping
whole other
data,
webinar.
like yeah, there's so many challenges there, and then you have all these point solutions on top that create fractures as well. So that's the challenges I see in the market of just how do we give all of these people a really unified brand experience from start to finish.
Yeah, sorry, Tim. Yeah, it's just saying, how do you take it from this where you have everything kind of broken down and really turn it into something that looks like this? Of
Yeah.
where you have, instead of all of your various silos and departments, but it's really everyone has been working together to create this entire journey. Now you're still managing different areas of it, and of course, because no one person or department can do it all, uh, but working together to create true revenue engagement.
Yeah, end to end from when somebody comes in and starts looking at your website and self-educating through when they move on, like we'll be talking about later, right? Moving on from that role at that company to then starting up maybe a revenue operations role at a new company. Revenue engagement could be the side of the house for us as sellers and service teams, success teams that says this is our function, right? This is what we need to do. We need to engage across the whole revenue path. But the other flip side of that is really just the buyer journey, right? It starts
Mhm.
at first connecting and qualifying and the processes we need to do there, but then making sure they're successful, supporting them, creating fans at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go ahead and start at the very top and just kind of work our way down that system. Um, so yeah, you really it all begins with understanding who you're bringing into this process and why. So truly understanding your target audience and who you're going after and why. I know that when I'm talking with a lot of companies or on any conversations, we constantly go back to who is your ideal customer. And it's not just who do you want to sell to, because of course we would all love to sell to the IBMs of the world, but who can you actually reach first of all, and then who's actually ready to buy your product. So by taking just some real data driven elements and looking honestly quarterly, this should be done quarterly, of okay, what technologies are your successful customers using? What are the firmographics? How big are they? What is the revenue size? How many employees do they have? Where are they located? Are you somehow like really hitting on one niche area and you want to put more focus there? Or are you wanting to expand into another location? And then also, this is very important that maybe not every marketer thinks about, but also your salesographic data. How long did it take you to close that person? How much time went into it, and how are you really understanding from that first website visit until a closed one? How long is that going to take you? Because from doing all of this, of course, identifying your buyer personas, who's going to sign on the dotted line, and by talking to other departments, you can get all of this information to build a realistic goal for who you can market to and who you should bring into this funnel.
I think you're spot on with the different quarterly analysis of those data points. And I think the other fascinating side of this is just I always draw two circles, one really big one, and like everybody knows their total addressable market. I think most people kind of understand their ICP. What are the things that indicate that they're in market? Like that's where I always have a challenge. And I think that's where I work really hard is okay, sifting through those accounts and saying, okay, out of the ones that we know is a fit from how they, what technology they use and the size and the shape, all that good stuff. Great. But are they in market? Are they actually interested, or are they assessing these tools right now? That's that other point that's so critical. So you got to be able to sift through it quickly.
Yeah, moving through the buying signals. Or, of course, if people have heard it before as intent data, whether that's you're partnering with someone to get that, or if it's intelligently looking at your system and saying, oh, someone filled out a demo page, I should call them in the next 5 minutes, versus if they just came in and got a white paper. Like it's knowing how to operationalize all of that information as well.
Mhm.
Yeah. So then getting access to that. And I love your point of who's in market, because this also goes into the buying committee. Once you have an idea of who's actually a fit and who's interested, then you can very quickly look through and figure out, okay, how do I get access into these? And definitely the first one that I know I put on here was, which is multi-channel and multi-department, of sales, marketing, everyone really working together to say, okay, who is the salesperson contacting, and how are we providing air cover for that for those people?
One and the other side is there's a lot of people with spam cannons, and I'll say that nicely, but that's basically the idea of like, look, I can drown someone in email. We all can. We all have that capability.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's more important to have the right email at the right time. Um,
Mhm.
give you an example with the pandemic when everybody went work remote. Sales intel was a huge, and this is a plug shamelessly because having cellular data was and like having a phone number to call that wasn't an office phone line made a really big difference at that point. Now, probably not as much in some aspects because maybe we've got fatigue on that side. So then maybe LinkedIn's really strong, or maybe we find that
Yeah.
certain buyers, because of their job and what they're functioning on, they're on Zoom all day long. Maybe once I gain access, maybe a text message is a great way to go. So I think it's
Mhm.
understanding that. All I'll say is you got to capture the best practices of your reps, be able to scale those best practices across the team or turn that into a process, and then put that into a flywheel, put that into, and we say this a lot in the marketing side, but I think it's becoming more apparent in the sales engagement, customer engagement side. Everyone asks, like, is there a perfect silver bullet cadence? Same way, is there a perfect silver bullet nurture sequence in marketing? No.
No.
Plan it, execute it, track it, right? Know that they're doing what we're planning, and then measure and optimize. And just kind of keep going through that cycle on these ones. And you'll start to see, oh, when I get to touch 5 and I've already introduced myself off these channels, they really start to maybe respond. Cool. Go use that again, refine it. And that's really think gaining access is just becoming such a critical piece, as buyers have a tendency to kind of give us the Heisman, push away a little and say, I can self research. You've got all that stuff on your website. I don't need to talk to sales yet. So,
Oh, for sure. And especially when you're gaining access to this committee, you have to be very purposeful in what and who you're talking to and knowing what they actually want. And that goes back to the research side too, of what is that person's pain point, and not just someone hitting me up and saying, "Oh, so I realized that you're using email marketing. Do you know that this can also help you? Like, here, let me give you this plug of as to why you should switch all of your processes." Now, even if it's a better process and it's going to help me, by coming in and just saying, okay, let's switch everything, as a decision maker, it's a bit jarring. So really focusing, like you're saying, on those sequences of, hey, like there is no silver bullet. Take what you've got, watch it, and then just constantly iterate, constantly perfect it. And of course, all of this helps when you've got the actual accurate information to reach those people too. Because just because you're doing calls or you're doing the emails, if it's not the right one, then that's going to also clog up the system and just really slow your funnel.
yeah. Well, I think a lot of people want the, hey, I just put out this new sequence and all of a sudden we're going to take off and it's going to change our status quo of where we're at today. And I just, setting expectations for anything is basically saying, look, it's a slow, arduous journey uphill, right? You're moving the rock uphill, and each time you just kind of need to benchmark and then analyze again and push it uphill the next step. And you're never gonna find that silver bullet. And once you do, 2 weeks later, it's gonna stop working, right? It's kind of like fishing. So
Oh goodness, no! I do you remember when everyone started spoofing the local area codes
yeah,
like years ago? Now
exactly.
I don't even care if it's my area code. I'm not gonna pick up the phone. Buyers catch on, and
Mhm.
especially even with the pandemic of everyone moving to a digital channel and increasing activity, email marketing has just exploded, even more so than it had been before because some of your other channels aren't working so much.
Mhm.
So really paying attention to what's working, and then like you said, it's going to change. This
Yep.
like I and hey, maybe we can do this again in the future because I'm sure in a few months some of this stuff will have changed and we can give some better best practices around it.
That's the fun part. Yep. Keep analyzing.
Awesome. So then why don't you take us down this path of a full experience for the delivering a connected buyer to customer?
Absolutely. So we all know that the work doesn't stop when our digital signature dries, right? So we've got a customer on board, and all that information, all of the sales waterboarding, so to say, of asking somebody, what's in their tech stack and how many people do you have and how are we going to configure with this and all this stuff, all that research that we did at the beginning to qualify that person to buy our product and make sure they were a good customer. Where's all that information go? I call that buyer context. And if content is king, we say context is queen. And it's really because if you don't have the two paired well, right? I might know who you are, what you're trying to do. You just bought our product. Here's the order sheet of the 6 products that you bought from us. Great. If I don't know why and I don't know what you're trying to get out of that or how it's going to
Mhm.
impact your team, I can't serve, implement, and find a success plan that's going to work for you. And I think too often that context that happened in the front end, the what you engaged with in marketing, what brought you to the table to buy, what conversations you had with your sales rep that you were opening up your heart and saying, here's my challenges, help me fix this. All those things that got you to the table to sign the deal, that's all lost a lot of the time, or it's sitting in a separate system or silo, or it's not in CRM where the rest of the
Mhm.
organization can maybe access it, or it's not clean enough for them too. So I think a lot of times we put either friction in that process, and if there's just ways to spread touch points across that initial interaction, maybe regather some of that information, or even put some touch points for internal communication to kind of make sure those
Mhm.
handoffs are smooth. And then you've got some great data points here because I think once you get a customer, you may only know 10 to
Yeah.
20% of who actually works at that account or who you're talking to.
Yeah, absolutely. Because once you've had all of that communication, they've come in and they're now using your product or service. That information, I love that information you had before of what brought them to the table. That's going to change in 6 months because ideally you've been helping them and now they're growing and their needs have changed. So that's also part of the success side of this, of how are you connecting with people? And then of course, how are you expanding the account? Of how are you able to build those relationships with the users at that organization? And even if it's not all of them, because sometimes you'll have like multiple seats and it's not feasible to do that. But if you can have that champion that you're working with that wants to lead that charge internally for you, they can also make those introductions for you. So you can have that champion that works there. Or, of course, you can also just enrich the information that you have. Like we know, CRMs are very helpful and they house a lot of information, but it does decay over time. It's going to go stale. Whether that's you're trying to expand, or like they've brought on a new person, or the metrics of that company have changed, a way to go in there and really build the relationship with them, and then of course just activate all that additional information to then get into those departments, because that the intros kind of assume that there's also wonderful working relationships. You may know one person in the company in one department, but it's a whole other can of worms once you start trying to expand and decide, well, maybe Bobby is really great over here in sales, but there's something going on that they just don't want to go talk to this other department, or there's not a good working relationship there.
Well, and Ariana, I think part of it too is if I'm selling pencils, I might be selling them to one department, right? But
Yep.
there's 30 other departments within these companies that could also use my pencils. And too often we're stuck selling to the one department and we never actually got to the person that maybe spurred that one department to buy from you, or that could also use your services. And I think when we do that, when we're only in small pockets, we don't get the brand awareness, the
Hmm.
exposure across other teams, and they might say, "Wow, well, this is already a trusted solution. Raise my hand. I want it too. Oh, I want it too." And all of a sudden,
Yep.
that could be a snowball effect for a lot of growth. And when we look at enterprise companies, and that's a lot of who we're selling into, a lot of their growth is coming from more utilization of the products and
Hmm.
solutions that they sell to, or more sales to those same companies that they sell to, right?
Yep.
Expanding those customer accounts. And so if you're in the business of expanding or trying to get those net renewals and getting that back, that retention rate, like this is as important, if not more important, for that side as it is for the net new sales.
Yeah, absolutely. It's building that community and
Mhm.
building that trust, because as soon as you see it and you have that and you think, wow, I also need that pencil that can help me write so much faster because I have a pencil deficit and I've been trying to solve this problem on my own. It's a very simple illustration, but it's very true.
Mhm. Absolutely. The biggest thing here, I think, where people fall off is they just, again, they wait for perfect. We wait for like the whole big map with the whole customer journey and mapping it all out, knowing that. And then when somebody goes off the path this way or that way, they're like, I don't know what to send them now. They didn't want my last email, or they didn't want this piece of content. I think you have to, again, look at your average customer or look at a handful of them, bring them in a Zoom call. Can't get close to face anymore right now, but bring them in a Zoom call, right? And just say, hey, what experiences have you loved over the last year being a customer with us? What experience haven't you liked? Or where do you see that we could give you some more value? Go put that into your customer journey and then start mapping those inflection points. I mean, even if it's as simple as every 3 months, we're going to touch base with everybody at these accounts in one way or another, or we're going to make sure that every customer gets these three pieces of information sent to them on a regular basis. Those are great ways to just build that community and keep those touch points. The fun one I'm loving right now that we are all remote is the direct mail piece, right? Send some emails, connect with them on LinkedIn, connect with a user even on LinkedIn, and then all of a sudden you're like, hey, let me send you some swag. Let me send you a shirt, or let me say, yeah, exactly, the
I
pinatas.
got
Like,
my pinata. I love it.
yeah, good way to engage, great way to start a conversation, and good way to spend some postage stamps and make some interaction.
Yeah, no, and that's another element of channels changing. Because direct mail years ago, you're like, oh, I got another piece of mail. But now when you get a letter, there's excitement. Like, you actually took the time to write this and engage with me. I'm now very interested, because it does. It makes you feel good. It's great to get that mail and
Hey,
to
if emails had postage stamps would be spammed a heck of a lot less.
It's very, very true. So,
It takes some intent. It takes some dollars, and takes an effort. So it's fun.
mhm. So then that other growth opportunity of you've spent all this time, you've developed that relationship with the person, and now they're moving on to something else. Uh, Being able to keep track with them and actually, of course, track them across organizations, it gives you an automatic in. So whether that's again back to the communication element of, hey, we realized this person left. Hey, AE, like you had a really good relationship with them. Maybe you should go talk to them. And just having those, like you said, leveraging updates as triggers
Yeah.
for these new kickoffs. And hey, if there's, I'm sure there are better ways to automate that because, of course, we also get inundated with death by messenger uh, from inter office communications.
Yep.
Uh, but yeah,
Well, and I think it's identifying the ones that matter to you or the ones that you have context for, right? So think about it. I'm a recruiting firm and you just got a promotion or you just got a new job or something like that. And I want to make sure that I'm building my portfolio of people. We know there's going to be talent shortages across different industries, stuff like that coming up, right? What a great opportunity to say that's what I'm going to trigger on for the next 6 months to accomplish that. So I think we have to look at these triggers and say, what's the context, right? Like if I don't need everybody's promotion and everybody's job change at my customer's company, but maybe I sell the operations team. So anyone that has a job or title change inside of revenue operations, sales operations, that side of the house, hey, I want to get notified. And because I've got context around the person I'm talking to, the role that they're in, and where they're at, hey, let me make sure that that message resonates with them. Maybe I give them a toolkit for or a survival guide for revenue operations at a new company. But the only way I can get personalized is not by saying, hey, trigger this message when any customer at any company goes and sends this out.
yeah,
It's got to be, you know, give me a time when operations person at one of my customers moved into a new role in operations, send this out. And so that context is so critical, but those triggers and Mariana, we use the data side of this to do that is
yes,
boom, hits the alert and then goes into our solution and pops out that message. So good way to work.
yeah. No, and I'm glad that you brought up that data component of it too, because not they're not going to, unless you have just an astounding friendship relationship with this person, they're not going to tell you when they switch. So then you have to try to figure out ways to identify that as a part of the process. Of course, working with data partners and data providers is one way to do that, especially if they're updating their systems regularly. They can tell you that, hey, this person changed. Because always on LinkedIn, sometimes they'll start a new position, and I know several of my friends that will not update their profile until after 3 or 4 weeks after they've been there, just because it doesn't cross their mind. They're so inundated with all the things that they themselves are trying to do. It's like the same similar thing with a CRM. Like you're trying to move and hustle as fast as you can. It's the data entry of those smaller things that just kind of gets bumped every now
Well,
and then.
and speaking of that stuff, I think we've got some common pitfalls and some solutions for those coming up. But it's that idea. It's that like if I can't trust the data, or I send something out wrong or some of those things, like, yeah, then you don't look good. Then you kind of feel like foot and mouth type thing, right? Or bad interaction. And so sometimes that's the blocker to implement some of these things.
Mhm.
So the accurate data is critical.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you were talking about this just a second ago of identifying those triggers to creating the meaningful moments. So here's just some example of those. Which of them do you want to dive into first?
Yeah, just looking at the time, we'll go real quick, but I think of break it down into pre-sales, post-sales, long-term, or
Yeah.
what matters to you, right? And so pre-sales, get creative, put a handful up. I wouldn't go too
Send
many,
the
but pick
pinata.
a few, right? Yeah. Post-sales, pick a few through your customer journey that are inflection points. And then long-term, I always think of, okay, what are memorable dates, right? Some people love the birthday thing, some people don't, but memorable dates to either your customer or to the interaction you have with that person, right? The other side of it would be what are some things you want to be known for, right? So maybe you're a brand that really wants to be known for a certain day of the year, or you really want to be known for a certain experience. Well, then make that part of those triggers and part of those touch points for yourself. Make it memorable. So,
Yeah, no, and that's the whole brand experience, bringing it all back together. But yeah, we'll quickly touch over these common pitfalls.
Yeah, so I think, for both of us, we talked about the left and right hands not knowing what each other's doing and just not having all that stuff organized in a single place. I hate switching between screens. I hate having to export CSV files and move them between platforms and that stuff. If I can eliminate that and if I can have that in one place, I'm gonna raise my hand to do that any day of the week because it's gonna allow me to do the marketing stuff that I love to do without the
Mhm.
pain of some of those other things. So that to me is super critical. Just having that single point of truth, making sure that you can work across departments, across teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you had mentioned earlier, is the data accurate? Is what you have in that source of truth that you've identified? Are you actively doing things to keep it up to date? Are you checking on your contacts? Are you making sure that the all of the little buttons and triggers that you need for reporting, or whoever needs it for reporting, are actually being ticked by the people responsible for making that happen? So it's not just operationalizing everything and the technology, but then also the people. Are you enabling them and making this a part of their workflow?
Oh, 100%. And then you got to have a backup, right? I always say there's
Yes.
no merge field that ever goes into an email without a backup, right? Same thing. There's no, we've all had those issues, right? You
Hello,
get,
first name.
yeah.
How are you doing at company?
Uh-huh. Well, but it's the same thing. Like that's when we're building these out, we think of it a lot when we talk about marketing, but we don't necessarily think about that now across the whole organization because coming off tone deaf or coming off totally inaccurate also kills it. So have a backup. That's what I would say. And then
Absolutely.
go get started, right? I think both of us laughed when we put this, but it's true. Everybody waits for the perfect cadence, the perfect, trigger to go off of, the perfect sequence. Get started. Get going.
Go break stuff. Like, not a lot of stuff, but just go start doing, because all of these things that you're trying to make it perfect and find those like small gaps, I promise you, if you just start doing, you'll find them very quickly, and much more quickly than you would have if you're trying to plot everything out specifically, because that's always the worst thing, especially in marketing. They say, of even if you can't do some kind of media or channel at the level that you want, the worst thing to do is nothing. So it's better just to go ahead and start being a doer in that sense.
Put the boat in the water, right? You'll see where
Yep.
the leaks are.
Don't sink the ship though. Be very careful when you're purposely trying to push the boundaries. Please don't break your entire CRM. I'm not advocating for that at all. But awesome. All right. Hey, we went through an entire funnel in about 28 minutes. It was a
Well,
lot of time. Uh, was a very high level element. So for people that are here, if you have questions, please go ahead and start putting those in the QA and into the chat. Was there a specific part of the funnel? Was there a specific area that you had questions about? Anything that we can help you with, their answer, we're here for. Which CRM are you recommending? That you have one.
definitely that you have one. I think, when I look at some
Yeah.
of this, the things that I look for are is it easy to use? Can you get everybody on it from all your different teams, depending on the size of your organization, right? Does it fit? And then the automation within those CRMs is probably one of the most critical pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, of course, Salesforce is the titan in the space. It's very helpful, but it's also a big lift. So then, when you're looking at these technologies, of do you have the expertise on hand to actually make this work for you, or are you going to need that additionally? So then, there's a lot of factors that go into it. But I love what you said there. Of uh, does it work with your automations? Is it going to actually move the needle for you?
One, Salesforce, Microsoft Dynamics, I think those are the two behemoths, and it's a
Uh,
great full ecosystem to be on.
yep,
A lot of options.
yep. Oh no, there's so many. Got a ton. How do you get buy-in from CEO down? That's a good question.
That's a great question. So first off, I think what you've got to look at it, and you've got to say, okay, what's it going to take to implement this, and why wouldn't somebody buy in, right? Make that list. Like to me, I'm going to increase engagement across my entire customer group and my entire prospect group. There's no negative there, right? Um, we're going to make this more measurable and more predictable. There's no negative there. Um, I'm going to need support from ops, and I'm going to need some creative support probably for creating the experiences. And I'm going to have to pull in people from different teams to get this done. I don't see a negative. So when you're creating that buy-in, I think when you lay that out in the logical way and you say, this is what top performing organizations can do, have the ability to do today. This is where we're seeing benefit, which is more touch points, more intimacy with our customers. And hey, we're just spam cannon sending a bunch of messages. Now look what the response is. What if we go to this more personalized approach? That's where I like those pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially when it comes to the executive level, you have to bring it to the elements that they care about. If you can directly show that this is going to improve, if we can implement these things, it's going to improve our revenue by X. You're going to get a lot of buy-in very, very quickly, because there are a lot of stats and studies of just looking at the two departments of marketing. Of oh goodness, I'd have to look it up. I don't want to misquote it because I know it was we put it out, but like you could increase your sales conversion rate by having your sales and marketing team aligned by like X%. So things along those areas that you can pull into that conversation as well are also going to help give you some extra weight behind what you're wanting to do.
Yeah, I mean, some of the studies we've seen recently, we were working with a pilot program at a large enterprise, and it was 2x in meetings booked. It was, over 2x in pipeline creation. And so
Yeah.
you start to see some of these things, and it's like just by going past the second touch point, just by going outside of email and voice and going to LinkedIn or text message when you got the compliance, just those small expansions could mean a 5% lift in a CSAT score because they're getting more engagement, or an NPS score, or a, you know, 2x lift
Hmm.
in meetings booked. And I think when you bring it to those metrics, like we're going to book more meetings, we're going to understand what closes business, we're going to understand what our customers want to hear from us a little bit more, and I'm going to improve NPS or CSAT. I mean, that goes across the health of the whole organization.
Yeah, and by getting all that information, bringing it back up to that tot of that revenue, if you're going to reduce your CAC, you're going to reduce your cost for customer acquisition because you're going to understand better and more efficiently. So yeah,
I
great
think
question.
productivity is a big play right now. I think that's a huge one.
Do what? Sorry, I missed that.
Productivity, just do more
Yeah.
with less, right? We have there's a lot of drag on organizations across operations and the amount of stuff we're all asked to do each day. So anything that you can do to increase productivity.
Tim, thank you so much for joining me today on this event. It was really fun talking with you and really moving through the stuff that I know I'm thinking about every single day of how can we optimize this? How can we make it better? So thank you again for joining. I'm excited to see what you and Conquer are going to be doing soon. I know you've got this website launch coming up, so
Yeah,
can't wait to see it.
excited to engage with a lot of people. So yeah, thank you for having me, and always fun to talk about this stuff. Take care.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. Thanks everyone for joining. Bye.